It's time to get the story behind the story. Interviews with newsmakers, news breakers, and Vermonters making a difference. WCAX presents 802 News with Mark Johnson. Here's Mark.
Chances are you know Joe Carroll from his award-winning series he hosts on WCAX, Super Seniors. Last year, Joe found out he has advanced prostate cancer. In this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company, the 62-year-old 40-year veteran videographer recounts his journey from what he calls the worst day of his life to his current status of being in remission. And his message to all the men out there, get regular checkups. Early detection, he says, likely saved his life. We'll kick off our discussion in a moment. At Red Hen Baking Company, they believe pure, uncomplicated ingredients in the hands of skilled artisans are the building blocks for great food. They're dedicated to creating the best food from the best ingredients. You'll find an ever-changing lineup of delicious pastries, sandwiches, and soups at their beautiful cafe off Route 2 in Middlesex, just off I-89. Their breads are also available in many other locations. Led by owners Randy George and Eliza Kane, Red Hen Baking Company has been on the leading edge of the local food movement since 1999. When and how were you diagnosed?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for having me. So it was March 4th, 2024, so not too long ago. I was on the road and on a super senior shoot, and I was finishing up the shoot, and I looked at my app, which is the UVM Health Connect app, because I knew it was going to be coming in soon about the results of my prostate test, which I believe it was an MRI first. And then it happened. I looked and I saw cancer and I freaked out. This is in the middle of a shoot too, so I still had to keep my game face on, which was hard. I'm trying to do stand-ups for the super senior. I finished with her, and I'm down in Wilmington, Vermont, which is not that close to Burlington, as you know. And all I can think of is I'm trying to do these stand-ups on this happy story, super senior, and I'm like, I'm going to die. You know, this thought bubble was over my head just throughout that. And then to top it off, I had to go down to Massachusetts, right across the Brattleboro border, to interview a 99-year-old man who saw the last solar eclipse. And he was complaining about his eyesight going. And all I could think of I felt like saying to him, yeah, you're 99 years old.
That's what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm most likely not even going to be around at 99. So that was...
How old are you?
62 now. 61 at the time.
Why did you go to even get a test done?
So in November of the previous year, I went to see my primary doctor, Dr. Beatty, and he did the old-fashioned index finger of you-know-where and found out there was a bump on my prostate. And he goes, yeah, that's something we should get checked out. Now, my PSA levels were still pretty good. In fact, I wrote it down. Like 2021, it was 2.2. Then it went to October, then 2 years later, 3.0. And then it went up to 3.6, still in the normal range. But there was the velocity. So with the nodule that he found and the numbers going up, he said we should get that checked. That I didn't get in to see a primary or a physician's assistant to check it out, the cancer department at University of Vermont Medical Center until February. I remember him saying before he checked, oh, you're so far ahead of the game. I'm like, okay, well, still check. And he did, and he goes, yeah, we need to get that. And so that kind of ties in with what I'm saying about I found the results after I had a scan done. And finding it out, on an app, especially when you're alone, and you're so far away from the hospital and people you can talk to. But I was frantically trying to Google what this meant, and the cell service wasn't good.
Eesh.
I called my Dr. Beatty, and he wasn't in that day. And then a physician that was there in his office called me back eventually. She said, well, just take it easy. Prostate cancer usually is a slow-moving cancer, So that calmed me down a little bit. But, of course, driving back, I still had to process all of this. Of course, it wasn't a slow-moving cancer. It was of the aggressive type. And it kind of snowballed from there.
When did you figure that out, that it was a fast-growing one?
When they did more tests, they did a biopsy, and the doctor, when I saw him as a urologist, and I remember him saying, I am so sorry, I apologize. And I kind of was taken aback by that. I'm like, why are you saying that? Almost like you're a defeatist attitude. You didn't cause this. It just happened. And then it was determined I had what's called this Gleason score of a 9. 10 is the highest, and it also had spread to my pubic bone. Just a little speck, but that meant the horse had left the barn.
Any family history of this?
Not a prostate cancer. My mother had kidney cancer. Her mother did too. So there is, looking at my family, my mother's side, a lot of my cousins, well, I have 49 first cousins, Irish Catholics, like French Canadians. 5 or 6 of them have had cancer, and a couple of them have died. So there's a good-sized percentage that have had cancer in my family. But no, my dad was fine, as I was aware of. I think I told you this before, but my dad lived to be 90. My mom was 91 when she died. And I was so smug. I'm like, of course I'm going to live that long. I felt sorry for these people that die in their 70s. And here I am thinking and being told that it could be just a few years or longer, 10 years perhaps. But it brings mortality to the forefront when you're 61 years old.
I looked up this Gleason score. I had not heard of that before. I've heard of PSA, obviously. And, as you mentioned, you have a 9. Joe Biden has a 9.
Correct.
I didn't even know what's the difference, your understanding, what the difference is between the Gleason score and the PSA?
Well, so the Gleason score, and of course, I'm a layman here, not a doctor.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. The higher it goes, the more aggressive it is. PSA levels is your prostate-specific antigens. And again, mine were in the good level. So somehow the body got fooled. I know people that have gone to the doctors and the PSA was 50, 100, and the doctor goes, you most likely have prostate cancer. One of the things is if your prostate PSA levels are lower, that's good. Mine now are undetectable because of radiation treatments that I've had last summer. Was it a month's worth in July? Also radiation treatment for my pubic bone. That was a couple zaps. And that was done at the University of Vermont. I did go down to Dana-Farber just to make sure that University of Vermont is doing what they would do. And I talked to a doctor who's probably one of the best in the world, and he said what UVM is doing is exactly what we would be doing. So that was reassuring. However, it was the first time I'd heard stage 4 cancer. And I turned whiter than I am normally. And he noticed that I was stunned. I should have known, but I maybe blocked it out of my brain. And he said, oh, well, it's a low mass. It's not in a part of your body that is an organ, and they got to it. So that was good news. And he was more reassuring than one of my doctors that was early on.
What do you mean by that?
He just said there's stuff coming along that is dealing with your type of prostate cancer. We have, I don't know if he said it, but tools in the toolbox, if you will, to manage this. Back in Vermont, one of the first doctors I talked to, Dr. Wallace, said, your cancer is not curable, but it's treatable. That was difficult, but he's right. I mean, I feel good. I'm in remission. Every 3 months I go for an infusion of Lupron, which is a hormone or testosterone blocker, and I take other medications too to keep that at bay. So for the last 3 times that I visited my doctors, I'm doing well, so I'm in remission.
There seem to be these days a number of options. You can either get radiation, you can get your prostate removed.
Right.
How did you figure out, or how did you and your doctors figure out what course of action to take?
Good question. They said, no, we're going to keep the prostate in. We're going to do radiation treatment. And I asked, well, couldn't it still come out? And they said no. For less severe prostate cancer, a lot of men do have their prostate taken out. And, they go on their merry way, if you will. Obviously, they have to deal with some issues with that. The course for me was to keep the prostate in and take this medication along with the infusion.
How did you get through that initial being stunned part?
Oh, it was the worst day of my life when I got that message on my phone. To get through it, I'm still getting through it. It's less and less of a thought bubble again over my head going, you're going to die, you're going to die. It's now, the voices have lowered. It's still there, but I feel good about continuing on. I think there's ways to take care of it. But yeah, it was dark days. Anybody, and I'm not alone, of course. There's so many men who have gone through prostate or are going through prostate cancer, and I've met so many of them. I'm sure you know quite a few people too, but it's in my mind still.
Well, it's one of those things I would imagine that once you have it, you discover all these other people that have it or one-offs that have it. You go, oh my God, it's everywhere. Have you gotten any sort of
Support
help?
Groups?
Yeah.
No. And I also should say that I've had a lot of family members that have helped me out and friends. There is a support group that within friends. It's not like I go to an AA meeting, if you will. I talk to them, and it's really helpful. Yeah.
Well, you find out who your friends are in these kind of situations.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be surprised, perhaps, how many men are dealing with prostate cancer. Mine is perhaps a little more severe than others, but it's been very helpful for me. Also, the American Cancer Society, I've been in touch with some of the folks there. The hospital has been, University of Vermont Medical Center has been there very much also. There's, staff of psychiatrists that if you want to chat with them. I haven't got to that point. There was earlier on they wanted to know because I called in because I said, this is always on my brain. And they said, well, are you depressed? And they went through the list, and I'm sleeping well. Not sleeping well. I'm sleeping. I'm getting up. I'm going to work. I'm not in those categories of depression. But it's certainly been the biggest test of my life. Over the weekend, I went to the Relay for Life in Rutland. It's a fundraiser for cancer survivors. I shot some videotape. I didn't wear any Channel 3 out gear. I had a small camera that was there to cover it, but they give out medals to survivors. So I wore that when I was going around the lap for the people who have survived cancer. Some people knew who I was, I think, and they're like, why is he wearing a survivor medal? But I'm now at a point, as obviously I'm talking to you, where I want to talk about what's going on and I hope more men get tested. And it shouldn't be a secret. It's reality. It's what's happening with so many people.
But there is, I think, that inclination, at least early on, to not talk about it. You don't want to have that become your identity.
Exactly. I posted it on Facebook about a month ago, so it was over a year that I'd gone through this. It had, leaked out a little bit, if you will, not from people here. These people that I let them know, mostly management and close friends of mine at Channel 3, did not say a word to anybody, and I really respect that. But, I've told some people, and it's bound to happen. And so I put it on Facebook, and I called it a PSA, public service announcement about PSA levels. And I said, don't feel sorry for me. Don't treat me like a victim. I want this as a way for people to get tested. So many men just like, I'll get my physical next year. Also, I'm really a proponent of doctors doing the physical checkup with your prostate. I think, and my doctor agrees, that if we had let this go another year, it's like, well, let's look at my PSA levels in January of 2024 was 3.6. Let's see if it goes up anymore. I would be in much worse shape than I am now. And I want to preface that by saying I'm not in bad shape right now. I feel great.
Were there any warning signs of this? Was this just a regular checkup you had and they found it?
Regular checkup.
Wow. Okay, so you had no idea. You didn't. There weren't.
No.
I mean, there are people that have indications, and it's very easy to say, oh well, that's nothing.
I didn't know, enlarged prostate, perhaps going up to go to the bathroom at night was common, but I just assume, when you get in your 60s, that's part of life. I did go, so in November is when I went to the doctor, and he said, yeah, we should get that checked, and it was late February that I finally got to see a physician assistant. I did go on a safari in Africa, and I said to myself, it was expensive with a friend of mine, I want to go because I just have this feeling there's going to be something found, and I want to go on this trip, And sitting in this bumpy Range Land Rover for hours and hours, there was some pain down there.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. But it was sharp. It wasn't like, and I just had a feeling going into this, there was going to be something found. And I even felt like it was going to be worse than just prostate cancer. Unfortunately, it was true.
What are they telling you your prognosis is? You mentioned a pretty wide range of years.
Yeah, 3 to 5 to 10, but that is from other doctors. My oncologist is much more, Dr. Anel, more optimistic. He doesn't put a date on it, and his physician's assistant, I don't see him every 3 months, she said, you're going to be around for years. And I started crying. And I was like, I don't know if it was because it was a woman telling me this. I wasn't stoic. I don't know. It just felt more comfortable. And I said, I'm sorry. This is the best news that I've heard. And then being a news guy, I went home and dissected what years means.
Right. 2 years? It could mean anywhere from 2 to 40.
Exactly. But I'm optimistic that I could be around for a while. Hopefully I won't have to go through chemotherapy, but we'll see. I have to stop drinking. That was I wouldn't call it a challenge, but, I'd have a beverage or two every night. Surprisingly, I'm good about that.
And why do you have to stop drinking?
Because it will affect the medication that I take every night. This, I can't even pronounce the name of it. Let's just call it the cancer pill that is in concert with the Lupron shot, that they work together to keep your PSA undetectable. That's where I'm at now.
To basically keep your testosterone levels down?
Exactly.
What have you learned about yourself in the process of all this?
It's a bit of a cliche, but you're stronger than you really think you are. I think I'm more understanding of other people, what they're going through. I think now I don't worry so much about traffic, or if there's somebody waiting to turn and they're not going. I don't know. I think I have a better understanding of life and how fragile it is. All of the above.
Yeah, waiting in the line at the post office isn't as bad as it used to be.
No, it's just part of the adventure of what we go through. I did, after getting diagnosed, go to Quebec. No, I'm sorry, Prince Edward Island and the Maritime areas. I had never been there, so I'm going. I went to Portugal, and then my friend Kika Branger and I went to her home state in Brazil for a couple weeks and saw that part of the world. So it's been really, and I've always said to myself, I love traveling. I've probably been to 30 countries, that I'm going to travel until I can't. And that's been my my mantra since probably in my 30s, and not wait until retirement. So I'm really fortunate and happy that I have done that I've gone all these places. That is good news, and I have to remember that. And I've also, as you know, take video for my super senior stories, but I'm quite the shutterbug too, so I have some pictures from every single trip and look at it every time.
Where'd you go in Africa?
Tanzania. It was a tour group. It wasn't like me and my friend hitchhiking through Tanzania.
My brother and I did that and went to Ngorongoro Crater. Did you go there?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? Were you part of a tour group, or did you?
We were a tour group of two. I was 22. My brother was 27. I just graduated from college. He just graduated from law school, and we just went, and we did some incredibly naive things, like try to walk downtown. And
you stood out.
People picked us up and said, "What do you think you're doing?" We said, "Well, we're walking down to the village." They said, "Get in the truck," and we went around the corner, and there was a lion right there. So you got to remember, when you're in Africa, you're in their habitat. They're not in your habitat.
Yeah. And we stayed in beautiful hotels. It was not roughing it. But I got to see the lions and the giraffes and the rhinos and everything else. So it was a great trip.
What's been your experience with insurance?
It's been a challenge. I have good health insurance through WCAX, but there's some questions about my radiation treatment. It was about $125,000 for the radiation treatment. And the hospital only got refunded for $98,000 or something. So they had to go battle. But I was in the middle of this. So it got taken care of. I wrote a note to my doctor, and I said, I'm doing fine, but my insurance company is making me stay up at night. And he looked at that and said the hospital will be taking care of that. So other than that, so far so good. But I know people out there, I couldn't imagine not having insurance. People can get bankrupt quite easily. It's amazing how expensive things are. Flip side, I'm here, and I got good care. I'm going to continue working until I don't feel I can. I'm doing quite well. You know, when I first was diagnosed with this, I told the general manager, Jay Barton, and news director Roger Garrity, I said, this doesn't look good. You know, I'm going to probably have to take leave, be out for a while. And they understood. But thankfully, I've worked throughout all of this. Most of my coworkers didn't have any clue until I sent out an email prior to the Facebook post that I mentioned that I was going through this. And again, I didn't want to be considered a victim. A lot of them were surprised, like, you went through radiation treatment, which for the most part was painless. The sessions were only 10 minutes. You can't move. You just look upwards, and the machine does its zapping. It's a routine. You come back the next day, Monday through Friday, get into your Johnny, drink your water, get on the table, leave.
And some people experience exhaustion as a result of radiation. Did you have that happen?
A little bit. There were days that I would come, it was done in the morning, thankfully, and I only live a couple miles from the hospital, and I would tell someone who knew, I said, I got to go home and take a nap for a while. I'll be back. Totally understanding. When you hear that, when I hear somebody has cancer, I am so sorry. There's so many different types of cancer, but still it's the C word. And so anybody who doesn't have it, or as I said, people who do, it's still that word that really brings fear to everyone. And everyone, as you know, has been affected by cancer, either yourself, family member, or a friend. I don't know when it's going to go away, if ever. One of the things you mentioned, Joe Biden, and he has the same type of cancer that I have. I saw that in a New York Times article, and it said he has aggressive prostate cancer, and that kind of triggered me because I had taken that word out of my brain vocabulary and called it not aggressive but advanced. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, there was a New York Times article that I'm like, over the mouse. Do I click on this and read it because it was about what he's going to go through or what it is? And overall, it was a positive article. It talked about how far advanced they have to deal with this type of cancer. In years past, it could have been months, and then you die. And I'm still here. I plan to be. I'm still upright and walking around and doing my super senior stories. So.
I would imagine if the super seniors, do you talk about it with them?
Some of them I have, especially if they have gone through cancer. I say, well, I'm going through this right now. It's not like I come in with a sign and, hey, here I am, Joe Carroll with cancer. But a lot of folks have done this. You know, I feature people over 70. So when you're over 70, most likely you're going to have some health issues. And they've been very good to me. One of super seniors who had prostate cancer, I let him know that I'm going to go in for tests. And this is before I knew. And he's been super supportive of me, of getting through it. He sent me a pillow with no fear. Just I have that at my house. Look at it every single day. This weekend, I told you I was at the Relay for Life, and one of the guys recognized me as the guy that does super seniors. Most likely they don't know my name. They go, hey, you're that guy.
Yeah.
Fine with me.
The super senior guy.
Yeah. It's super. And
when I was doing a radio show, people would say, "Hey, there's the 9 to 11 guy."
So this guy didn't even recognize I had a survivor medal on, and he did too. And he talked about his cancer, and I told him maybe I told him first. I said, "Yeah, I have prostate cancer." And he says, "Well, that's what I have too." He said, "You're going to get through this." And it was very similar to what I have for the cancer too. So I left that feeling positive and supportive. So there's a lot of people out there that are rooting for me to keep on going. That's what I plan to do.
Have you done any alternative treatments of any kind?
No, I have not. Maybe eating better. I'm staying away from foods as best I can of junk food, but I haven't gone into alternative medications. I asked my oncologist, I said, "Well, should I be looking at what they're doing in research and see what they're doing at Mass General, Dana-Farber, Mayo Clinic?" And he goes, "That's a waste of your time right now. You're doing great. You're cancer-free," with an asterisk, of course. So no, I haven't gone down that route.
And I wonder, if you read about it, if that doesn't change. I don't know if it makes cancer grow, but I mean, I think your mindset is an incredibly important part of all of this.
It is. Sometimes I'm like, why are you so optimistic and happy and talking to people and joking around? This is who I am. I don't want to get into this like stay in bed and just not do anything. I still, like I said, travel. I want to continue going and make every single day, another cliche, as best as possible. I go down to the waterfront and look at the sunset when we have them. Hasn't been wonderful this year because so much rain, but I really do appreciate life much more, I think, than I did before.
How do you convince people that you don't put this stuff off? I find that difficult.
I don't know. I really don't know. I tell people there's a lot of men and women who just are so nervous about going to the doctors, so scared because they feel if they go, they're going to find something, as opposed to if you go, maybe they'll get it in time and it won't be as severe. I have no idea how you convince people, except going with you on this podcast and saying, get tested, go, and if the doctor, don't go just with the PSA levels, do the digital check, be assertive. My mother was a RN, and as I mentioned earlier, she had kidney cancer along with her mom. And the story goes, her mom did too. So obviously it's a problem. But my mom was told by doctors, "Oh, it's probably nothing with the kidney." My mom said, "No, you check that." Thank God they did. They were able to take part of the kidney out that was cancerous, and she lived, as I said, to 91. So you have to be you have to tell the doctors, this is what I want, and go from there. Yeah. One of the things I suggest for people, if you're later on, I'm going about myself, is record the conversation with your cell phone, and it'll have a transcript most likely if you have a smartphone. That is so helpful to look at it and goes, oh, okay, he said that, because your mind goes everywhere. You're so worried about everything, and you're coming into a sterile room with a fluorescent light above you, and everything's clean, and then there's a knock at the door, and the doctor comes in, and then your brain kind of just freezes up, at least in my case. So having that is helpful.
I think you're not alone in that, and I think that's really good advice, because you're, not that our memories get any better as we get older either, and you want to be able to go back,
right?
And if somebody asks you, if you go to another doctor, you want to be able to share with them what the first doctor said, and if you don't have it recorded,
right,
you're depending on your memory.
I'm also in the Dana-Farber portal that's connected to the University of Vermont. So, finding out sucked by having it on my app. But now I have all the information, and it's right there. So that's helpful.
That is one thing I wish they would change, and I don't really know what the answer to that is. That, this whole idea with my chart, you find out things supposedly at the same time as your doctor.
Right.
There's a benefit, I guess, to the wonders of technology that we get information quickly. But wow, a lot of times it's filled with a lot of jargon, a lot of 6-syllable words that you're going and looking up, and boy, there isn't a 6-syllable word I know that isn't pretty scary.
Well, that was, when I got the first results back through my charts, and I'm so far away in all this wordage that I had no idea what it meant. And again, I'm trying to Google it all with limited cell service. I was like, what does this all mean? And that's why I was trying to call a doctor that I was familiar with, my primary, who I have a good relationship with and knows he was looking out for me. It does make it, because you're seeing it at the same time the doctors are seeing it. And I get it. They're super busy. There's so much stuff going on. I don't know if it's possible to have a red something on them to see an advanced marking that would say, maybe we should call him, say, come on in, as opposed to, there it is.
Are you scared right now?
No. I'm scared of dying. I'm not really. I hope I live a lot longer. It was originally that way. I'm now at a point where I'm a lot less. Like, I'm going to die. I'm not scared right now. I feel I'm getting very good medications, and what's going on is good. I mean, I'm at a point where now I feel much better than I was when I first started off. So I'm not scared. I realize that everyone's going to be in the same boat at some point, right? I hope I live to be my parents' age. I don't know if I will. Probably most likely not. But I'm going to live my life as best I can until I can't.
Big thanks to Joe for sharing his story. That wraps it up for this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company. Thanks for listening.